Christmas Eve, 2019. A 4-year-old boy with bright eyes and an infectious smile runs around his great-grandmother's house in Muncie, Indiana, tearing into presents and filling the room with laughter. His name was Hayden Ian Lee Mannis. What his family didn't know was that this would be the last time they would ever see him alive. Because 5 years later, when police finally began searching for Hayden, they would discover something horrifying. He had been missing this entire time, and nobody even knew it. This is the story of a little boy who disappeared into thin air, a father with dark secrets, and a family's desperate search for answers that may never come. To understand what happened to Hayden, we need to go back to the beginning. Born on May 15, 2015, Hayden's life was marked by instability from the very start. His parents, Dustin Mannis and Terry Williams, were struggling with serious drug addiction. When Hayden was just 1 year old, his world changed forever. After drug tests revealed his parents were using cocaine, the Department of Child Services stepped in. But the situation got even worse when authorities discovered Dustin in a motel room with baby Hayden, with heroin openly visible in the room. Can you imagine? A 1-year-old child in a room filled with drugs. The state had no choice but to remove Hayden from his parents' custody. But here's where the story takes a heartwarming turn, at least temporarily. Hayden was placed with his paternal grandfather, Gary Mannis, who everyone called Paw. For the first time in his short life, Hayden experienced stability and love. Gary would later describe Hayden as a good kid who never gave him any trouble. The little boy would shadow his grandfather everywhere, following him around like a devoted puppy. For a year and a half, they were inseparable. Hayden had found his safe harbor. But this happiness wouldn't last. In 2018, everything changed again. Dustin Mannis had completed his court-ordered probation and drug treatment. He was clean, or so it seemed, and he wanted his son back. He petitioned the court for custody of 3-year-old Hayden. Gary Mannis, Hayden's grandfather, fought desperately to keep the little boy. He pleaded with the court not to take Hayden away. He had given this child stability, love, and safety. But the legal system had other plans. The court ruled in Dustin's favor. The Department of Child Services didn't object. Hayden's mother, Terry Williams, was reportedly in prison on drug charges, so she wasn't part of the equation. Just like that, 3-year-old Hayden was taken from the only stable home he had ever known and handed back to his father. Gary Mannis watched helplessly as his beloved grandson disappeared from his life. At first, things seemed okay. During 2018 and early 2019, the extended family would see Hayden and Dustin fairly regularly. But slowly, gradually, those visits became less frequent. Then, tragedy struck the family again. In May 2019, Dustin's mother, Leanna, died. If Dustin and his mother were close, her death would have been devastating. Some believe this loss may have triggered what happened next. After that Christmas Eve gathering in 2019, the last time anyone in the family would see Hayden alive, something changed. Family members describe a fight between Dustin and Gary, though the details remain unclear. Suddenly, the visit stopped entirely. Hayden's Aunt Chloe would later post on Facebook that Dustin believed the family was trying to take Hayden away from him. Paranoid and isolated, he cut off all in-person contact with his relatives. But here's what makes this story so heartbreaking. The family didn't give up. They kept reaching out. Text messages flew back and forth, with aunts frequently inviting and even begging Dustin to bring Hayden to family events. "Please come to dinner. We miss Hayden. Just stop by for an hour." Dustin would always respond the same way, "I'll try." But he never did. In 2021, Dustin moved out of Muncie entirely. The text messages became even less frequent. And then, something chilling happened. He stopped responding altogether. His last message, sent on May 18, 2023, was haunting in its false reassurance. "Hey Aunt Barb, I promise on everything all is well. I promise you I've just been having a lot going on. Try to work on my family that I am making, and whatnot. I appreciate you reaching out and checking, but I'm just doing what I promised my mom I would do when she was on her deathbed, and that was look out for what make me happy. But all was not well. In fact, by this time, something terrible had already happened to Hayden, and Dustin was living with a horrific secret. The truth began to unravel in the most ordinary way possible. In September 2024, two elderly women, both Dustin's great-grandmothers, happened to run into each other at a store in Muncie. During their casual conversation, one grandmother mentioned something that stopped the other in her tracks. She said that Dustin had told her that Hayden had been taken away by child services again in 2022. But wait, this directly contradicted all those messages from Dustin saying everything was fine, that Hayden was fine. Alarm bells went off. The Manis family immediately contacted both the state and the police. When they checked with the Department of Child Services, they received shocking news. There was no record of Hayden having been removed from Dustin's custody since 2018. Where was Hayden? Police launched an investigation immediately. When they found Dustin Manis in September 2024, they asked him the question that would expose his web of lies. Where is your son? Dustin's answer was the same story he'd told his grandmother, that Hayden had been taken by child services and given to his mother in 2022. But investigators quickly discovered this was completely false. In fact, when the investigation began, Hayden's mother, Terry Williams, posted a desperate plea on Facebook, begging anyone who knew anything about her son's whereabouts to come forward. The horrifying reality was becoming clear. 9-year-old Hayden Manis had been missing for years, and nobody had even known it. As police dug deeper, the timeline became even more disturbing. They discovered that Hayden should have been enrolled in school. He would have been 8 or 9 years old by 2024, but there was no record of him being enrolled anywhere. Neighbors who lived near houses where Dustin had stayed told police they remembered seeing 2 girls, but they never saw a boy child outside the house. Where was Hayden? The investigation revealed that Dustin had been living in various locations, including Eaton, Indiana, and in a house in Muncie with his girlfriend Crystal Hall and her daughters. Her father owned the house, and both father and daughter were interviewed by police. They denied any knowledge of Hayden's whereabouts. Police began searching these properties with cadaver dogs. Think about that for a moment. Cadaver dogs. Investigators were no longer looking for a missing child. They were looking for a body. In November 2024, Dustin was pulled over during a routine traffic stop. When officers noticed his nervousness, he explained that he had recently been questioned by police about his missing son. But that's when officers made another disturbing discovery. They found heroin, methamphetamine, and a syringe in his possession. Despite completing drug treatment years earlier, Dustin had relapsed into his deadly addiction. He was arrested and charged on December 4th. His grandmother posted $30,000 bail, still believing in him, still hoping for answers about Hayden. But those answers would never come. On December 15th, 2024, just days after his release on bail, Dustin Manis was found dead of a drug overdose. The coroner's report listed the cause of death as acute mixed drug intoxication. The last person known to be with Hayden could no longer speak to what happened to him. The investigation hit a devastating roadblock. Police believe Hayden went missing sometime in 2020, meaning this little boy had been gone for 4 years before anyone even realized it. There were reports of a witness seeing him in January 2020, which is now listed as his official date of disappearance. But here's what haunts investigators most. If Hayden really did die or disappear in 2020, what do we make of Dustin's text to his family over the next 3 years? In his final message, he mentioned twice that he was working on making the family I've always wanted. Was this the delusional rambling of a man consumed by guilt and drugs? Or was there something even more sinister at play? Today, multiple theories swirl around what happened to little Hayden Manis. Some believe he was trafficked, though there's little evidence to support this theory. Others point to more sinister possibilities. There have been unverified reports on social media claiming Dustin confessed to abuse and murder, though police have asked for these posts to be removed and nothing has been corroborated. The Delaware County prosecutor appeared on Nancy Grace's show in February 2025, acknowledging there are reports of abuse and murder, but emphasizing that these claims haven't been verified. He did say there are haunting aspects to this case, but perhaps the most likely scenario is also the most tragic in its simplicity. Hayden may have met with an accident while in his father's care. There was a pond near one of the houses where Dustin lived. A 4-year-old child could easily wander away while not being watched. He could have had a fall. Dustin was struggling with severe addiction. He was not someone who should have been responsible for a child's safety. Given his family's description of him as gentle and good with kids, it seems more likely that this was a case of tragic neglect rather than intentional harm. But here's what makes this case even more heartbreaking. Some people have criticized Hayden's extended family for not realizing he was missing for so long. But is that really fair? Remember, COVID lockdowns began just 4 months after they last saw Hayden at Christmas 2019. Nothing was normal for in-person contact for the rest of that year. The family continued reaching out. One aunt says she extended invitations every single month. The bigger question might be, why wasn't Hayden's mother seeing him? She lived in the area, and when the investigation began, she immediately made pleas for information on social media. Today, 5 years after he vanished, Hayden Ian Lee Manis remains missing. His family has come to believe that their bright-eyed little boy is no longer alive, but they continue searching for answers, desperate to know what happened to him. The Delaware County prosecutor has made this promise. There are very few days I come to this office and I don't think about Hayden Manis. This case is on my mind, and it's on the investigators' minds on a daily basis. We're not going to stop until we get to an answer. We need to know the truth. Hayden deserves justice. His family deserves peace. And somewhere out there, someone knows the truth. Don't let Hayden be forgotten. Share this video, share his story, and help bring this little boy home.